Hi, welcome everyone. This is our third or fourth critical conversations with Middle East Peace Civic Forum. I'm so grateful for everyone that's on the call today. We're excited to facilitate another critical conversations between points of view that don't always fit perfectly, but we are creating a powerful listening. And in that listening, we get to hear other people's perspective and even make it part of our own when we listen deeply. So this is a exciting platform for peacemakers, people who see the possibility of peace in the world. And I'm very excited to share facilitating with Bill Phillips today. He will be facilitating the call, and the conversations will be led by Matt Lakenbach, who's actually the founder and CEO and director of Middle East Peace Civic Forum, and one of our newest board members, Walid. So this is board to board. We're peers in this space, all peacemakers, all people who want to see positive change in the world. And so we have a really powerful facilitation methodology. And by listening all the way through each other, with each other, instead of a debate and a back and forth, we really get to occupy each other's points of view more deeply. And so I'm going to hand it off to actually Bill. And Bill will be leading this call today and really making sure that the space is held as a sacred space and that everybody's heard. And this is what we offer that's unique for our nonprofit, but it's kind of our secret sauce. It's the access to peace. So Bill, without any further ado, you got the floor.
Thank you, Peter. So, Matt, Walid, we have a conversation to have. Who's going to start?
Walid, would you like to go first?
Again, all of a sudden, this flashback. Barak and Arafat in Camp David, that scene at the gate, and both inviting each other, who's gonna go first, and it was symbolic for who's going to compromise first. Well, I'm the Palestinian. I'm the one under the occupation, so let me begin. Where to begin with? Well, I believe that we should think about solutions. We're so deep in our mess, in our chaos, that we can't think about solutions. We're so inside the box that we need to zoom out and try to think a little bit about the solution, detach ourselves from all those emotions, sadness, frustration that all contribute to anger, not to mention fear. So if I want to think about solutions, I think I should, well, I speak about the Palestinian society. I think I should focus on what needs to be done. And right now, what needs to be done is trying to raise the voice coming from Gaza in particular, the Palestinian voice in general, that is being choked with the mainstream media, their editorial policies, and the agendas of the existing political parties. That's one thing, to show what's not being shown to the world. Another thing would be trying to create a shift in the line of direction and the direction of thought inside my Palestinian society, whereby this whole idea of resistance needs to be reconsidered and revisited, meaning resistance is existence, I understand, but what kind of resistance that will guarantee and make sure the safety of the existence? To me, throughout history, or historically since the beginning of all this chaos, armed resistance has shown without any doubt, its incapability to help Palestinians achieve their right to self-determination. And at the same time, if I want to mirror this on the Israeli society, I have also noticed that the usage of brute force and also the leaning on the security approach as a way to engage with Palestinians has also proven its failure. That's the given. Now, from our data, how can we move on? I believe we have also to focus on creating commonalities. Easier said than done. Yes, we share the hummus, we share the falafel. I get that. But to me, that commonality and common ground has to be bigger and deeper and has more value and depth. And I believe sincerely that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now I'm a Palestinian. Israelis, for the most part, they're Jews. They suffer anti-Semitism globally, historically. So the root cause or the biggest waiver of the flag of anti-Semitism would be white supremacism. And I've been putting this into practice recently by trying to unite Israel, myself, or having Israelis united with me against white supremacism and white supremacists. Now, it starts well, but then it retracts to each camp, like Pali terrorist, Israeli terrorist, Pali Nazis, Israeli Nazis, and that whole vicious cycle again. But gives me hope that that step or initial step of unity is there. How to continue with that ladder, I cannot say that I have all the answers, but at least there is a step to build on and carry on it. So I believe that's what needs to be done inside the Palestinian society and in cooperation with the Israeli one. Thank you.
How do you respond to that, Matt?
Yeah, well, that was very eloquent, Walid, for first of all. So I just want to acknowledge you on your eloquence. And I mean, to me, you're someone that represents a real leader in setting forth a new course. And you largely strayed away from some of the hot button issues, you know, the most heated issues. But I think what you pointed to is really valuable, and the need for each society to look at its own self and its own practices and beliefs and actions. I mean, you spoke of the Palestinian people, but to take the view of someone who's Jewish and what's necessary for Israelis and the Jewish world, I think there's also an opportunity to reflect and to kind of think about how we see ourselves in the next phase of our existence. So, you know, there's a mentality that pervades the U.S.-Israel relationship of supporting Israel's qualitative military edge. And so strength, superiority, and ability to overcome attacks from an enemy, that's one side of the coin. And we've seen the result of that, which is, you know, Israel is clearly more strong than the Palestinians and the amount of suffering in Gaza right now. But it was also in response to an attack on October 7th that was a declaration of war. So, so kind of going back to where you were going with this and the question of internal responsibility is we also get to look at, you know, what is the Jewish people's purpose going forward? What is the role of the state of Israel and its relationship with the Palestinian people? I think there's an opportunity today to see Israelis and Palestinians as leaders, as role models for the region, for the whole rest of the world. Clearly, there's a severe conflict going on, and lots to talk about that relate to that, that needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, there's an opportunity. And I think we haven't seen really the full blossoming of that opportunity. And sometimes it's hard to talk about that when we're dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of anger. But if we can keep that in mind as an intention, I think it makes it a little bit easier to kind of wrestle with some of the core issues. So I'll leave it at that for now.
How does that look when you know, when you're talking and you're wanting to come up with a solution? Where do you go from here?
That's a question for me.
For anyone really, but it's good enough for you, Matt.
Well, Walid, if you have anything you can answer, or else I'll be happy to answer.
Just I need to clarify the question, and then I need to try to recreate what has been said, just to make sure that I understood you correctly and the communication was delivered, if that's possible.
Sure. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and recreate what you heard?
Okay.
And then the question, as I understand it, Bill, was where do we go from here, right?
Yeah.
As a political solution.
As any solution.
Okay. I will go back to that. Just what I understood from what you said, Peter, Matt, is that you indicated or pointed out the the American-Israeli relations and this whole arms trade that is based on the security approach. I also heard that you recognize the imbalance of power between Israelis and Palestinians in terms of force and military-wise. And I also heard that to you, or what I heard is that October 7th was the thing or the attack that invited the Israeli brutality that's happening right now in Gaza. And I can't help but feel disappointed because this mess didn't start in October 7th. Yes, October 7th was awful, no doubt about that. But this awfulness has been going on for many decades. So to pinpoint October 7th as a starting point for this mess, I don't think is right or fair. Yes, I agree with you. Israelis and Palestinians, I can argue and say that we're literally the smartest people, not just in the region, but globally. Indeed, we're very brilliant as nations. And somehow this brilliance is also reflected in what's happening by the stubbornness. Yes, the pain and anger are there. And I believe that after all these years, this pain and this anger is a shared one. We have reached a point where we have accumulated enough together by causing each other that pain and anger to say that we have indeed a shared narrative or a shared common ground whereby we can try to redirect it. As for what political solution, for me personally, I don't mind any political solution. 2-state, 1-state, and anything in between a federation and confederation, whatever political system or shape that exists, or maybe we can craft a new one, be pioneers, why not? However, all what matters to me is the end of the occupation, the end of the war in Gaza, having a comprehensive political solution that does not just end with a ceasefire in Gaza. Otherwise, we'll be doomed to repeat the same cycle. So we have to find a comprehensive political solution. Now, how to do that is the $1 million question. Because the political solution, regardless what shape it is, that's the end game or the final outcome. To reach that, we're supposed to be starting from ground zero and then moving step by step. Unfortunately, the reality now, after October 7th, is that we're like in the minus. So we have to have a prelude for the prelude of the prelude of ground zero so that we can move on. That's how difficult the task is. But it's not impossible, regardless how frustrating it can be and hopeless, but we're not helpless. This meeting, for example, is an attempt, is an effort to show the people out there that yes, Palestinians and Israelis can talk and communicate, can sit down and maybe reach that political solution regardless what it is. And I believe that's what's missing, because the extremists are the loudest. They're the one dominating the image. So this is a way to counter them. This is a way of a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. So I just want to clarify one thing about your recreation of what I said. I did not say that October 7th was the start of all of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. And clearly there was a lot that happened before then that caused a lot of Palestinians to feel anger and feel a desire to take up arms. So I'm not saying October 7th was the first day of this conflict, by no means. It was a significant escalation and an act of war, and represented a behavior that is intolerable. And I think any country in the world that experienced a neighbor coming across a border and murdering thousands of people and taking hundreds of people hostage and wounding thousands more would tolerate such an action. So to condemn Israel for a response that is intended to prevent such matters, not simply just a tit-for-tat response that is proportional in terms of how many people die, but actually eliminates the threat. And let's look at the fact that Hamas is using innocent people as human shields, deliberately placing them in the firing line of people that are murderers. And Israel has a right, as any democracy, to defend itself. But that, I think, is somewhat tactical. I think I want to shift the conversation to a more fundamental issue, which is the question of Israel's existence as a nation and as a people and as a member of the community of the Middle East. And the Jewish people go back to this region thousands of years. The Jewish people were native to the Holy Land going back before Muhammad was born, before Jesus was born. Jesus was a Jew who came from the Holy Land and taught as a reformist Jew. And Abraham, if we believe the story of Ishmael and Isaac, and I mean, there's plenty of controversy to be had with that, but let's just say that the Jewish root gave rise to Islam, gave rise to the Islamic nation, gave rise to the Christian nation. So an attack on a Jew and a Jewish state is an attack on one's own roots. If you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, to attack Jews and attack Israel and say Israel must be destroyed and cannot exist, it's an attack on one's own spiritual roots. So I think that's something that we can actually find common ground. You know, we come from this spiritual family that values one God. And I mean, I grew up not as an expressly religious Jew, but as a spiritual Jew and someone who appreciates the traditions. And I also grew up in the 90s during a time of the Oslo process and a lot of optimism. You mentioned the White House lawn, where there was a handshake and a peace agreement made and a horizon for real coexistence, and that horizon got torpedoed. I don't think we need to go completely and dissect the causes, except to say it failed. At the end of the day, it wasn't enough to overcome the opponents of the peace agreement. So, okay, so we get to look and say, what didn't work and what can we do differently this time? So we've evaluated this. There was insufficient outreach to religious communities to incorporate voices of religious people, of civil society. There was a political conversation, but maybe it didn't take into account enough possible perspectives. So this is a conflict in part, I think, why it's so intractable is that both the Jewish world and the Palestinian world are so incredibly diverse, with a whole range of different communities, from religious to secular, nationalistic, anti this, anti that, pro this, pro that. So it's hard to find, there aren't even really two parties to talk to each other. So I think conversations like this to just kind of get the issues on the table are a good start. And we need to be having more discussion and more like really identification of what action we can take. How can we expand the conversation, expand the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood? So that seems to me is, maybe that's a little vague, but kind of along those lines in terms of what's next. That's what I see.
Very good.
Thank you, Matt. And I mean, one thing I'm aware of is just how many groups there are that are doing the same thing as you. Is there any future in considering how to bring them together?
You're muted, Walid.
I can't hear you, Walid.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay. As long as there is hope, there is always a future. As long as there is hope, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. But the tunnel is so dark, so how are we supposed to feel our way through it? I believe, and here, I believe that we need to agree on things. To not necessarily, because I don't want to abuse the term common ground, but there has to be a certain level where we agree on what happened in terms of historically and what's happening right now. And here I will try to recreate what I understood from it, because I really in a need to have it clarified. Yes, first of all, thank you for recognizing that October 7th was only a reaction. I agree with you that it is a call to war or declaring war. There is no doubt about that. However, as you have pointed out, is that October 7th was a reaction. This means that the war was already declared on the Palestinian people before October 7th.
Well, what I'm saying is it's
Because-
complicated.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
we can get
interrupting me.
into sort of,
Thank you. Thank you. May I continue, please?
yes.
Thank you. Because the arrests, the kidnappings, and the situation that is going on, I won't talk about rape. I won't talk about it. I will talk about the abuse, the daily one, conducted by the Israeli military towards Palestinians. And that's kidnaps and arrests. Okay. For example, after October 7th, we in the West Bank alone, we have more than 10,000 people, Palestinian people from the West Bank, who have been arrested. Nobody's talking about this. We have many people arrested from Gaza who have people who have disappeared with no access to any information about them. Now, again, you're saying that the Israeli reaction and the necessity of it is to prevent such an attack that has happened on October 7th in any future. Again, I can't help but express my disappointment because I felt that you did not hear what I said in my initial statement in this meeting. But I will not stop repeating it, and because I will never lose hope in changing our ways as Israelis and Palestinians, because I feel that the rationalization is leaning on the security approach as a solution. And again, that will never work for a situation that requires a political solution whereby the Palestinian people are granted their right of self-determination as much as the Jewish Israeli people were granted their right of self-determination with the establishment of the Israeli state. So, again, and I find it, because you selected the word democratic state and the right of Israel as a democratic, to defend itself as any democratic state. Does this mean that the right to defend oneself does not apply for democracies? That's just a question. And another one would be, what does it mean to defend yourself? And what's the extent of it? It is complicated, of course, I agree with you. Nativity to the land and the connection to it. I believe the Holy Land is as ancient as humanity itself, even before religions and the existence of idea of a religion, let alone Abrahamic religions. Therefore, everybody is connected to it. Yes, the Jewish people, the Israelites, the Jewish people. I'm not an expert, so the Jewish people. Of course, they have a connection. Of course, they've been there. And lucky to them, according to history, they were one of the first people who were there, but they were not the first. They were preceded by people. It's not like the land was empty. And the civilization and the continuation of a clash of different empires and cultures and states, the Holy Land is basically the melting pot of humanity itself. So I don't think that dismissing the connection of any of us to the land is useful. However, the question would be how that connection is manifested and consolidated. Unfortunately, it's being done in a toxic way, both sides. Yes, expanding the brotherhood of man, or whatever that means. I believe that humanitarian individualism is essential, meaning humanizing the relationship between individuals to be able to see each other as humans instead of just enemies. Because once you have an enemy, you demonize it. Once you demonize it, you elevate that element of humanity from it. You're a human, he's not. I'm a son of light, he's the son of darkness. So I believe part of the answer will be one person at a time by humanizing relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. Well, I just want to clarify a couple of things. I certainly did not say that the security approach is sufficient to addressing the conflict. And in fact, I echoed on the Jewish side your discussion about taking responsibility and ownership and looking at how Palestinians express themselves. We as Jews also need to look at what is our role in transcending a security approach. So it's a complicated conflict. You have two parties that have made decisions and acted as collectives and of course as groups of individuals going back decades. And there's been a lot of pain and suffering inflicted on each other back and forth. So it's a very complicated reality. So I'm not making a blanket statement about cause and effect. That's a complicated matter, and it's one that essentially lives in the past. So as of today, we get to make a choice, which is how we proceed. And we get to proceed in a spirit of partnership, and to create that partnership, we have the opportunity to work together to demonstrate warm relationships, committed practice of these kind of important conversations. I also want to address your comment about the connection to the land. My point was that the Jewish people have an ancient connection to the land that I think has been largely dismissed in much of the Arab world. But I did not mean to deprive other people of also experiencing indigenous and nativeness to the land. Certainly, there are Muslim communities, Christian communities, Druze communities, Baha'i people. There's all sorts of different communities, and atheists, we have Buddhists living there. But in terms of going back thousands of years, you have different villages with different people. There are people that have been rooted in one place, going back generations, and then you have people that have wandered. You have people living in Palestine who came from Syria, from Iraq, from Morocco, from Europe, from all over. So there's the people there experience some degree of indigenousness and some degree of non-indigenousness. And regardless of the situation, all humans deserve the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That's sort of the American credo. So what we have to figure out is, how can that reality exist in the Middle East? We have to acknowledge one another, and we have to forgive, and we have to, there's stuff that needs to be addressed, obviously. So to me, it's two sides of a coin. It's the yin and the yang. On the one side is, we have to deal with the stuff that's not working, the belief systems that are exclusivist, that say we're right, you're wrong. It's a form of arrogance. So that's the one side. We have to deal with that. And then the other side is, we get to say, hey, Walid, my friend, let's go for a hike together. Let's go, have a meal together and enjoy each other's company and imagine what it can be like. So I think it's walking the narrow bridge, as they say.
How can
So,
you?
I mean, just to finish your point about humanization, I totally agree with you that we need to emphasize that. Yeah, Bill?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how to get more people involved, because what you people are doing is talking very positively on all these lines. How can you engage with other people who are doing similar things in order to create a critical mass, so to speak? I mean, if you consider that a possibility, I just wonder what thoughts you may have on that front, either of you.
Absolutely. Before I respond, I need to say that, Matt, if we're ever having a meal in a restaurant, you're buying, brother. Now, how to get more people? I believe if we are genuine, if we are impartial, if we are objective, we can offer at least those people who are on the other side an option, another thought for them to consider, another way. And by us walking that path, they can follow. I'd like to think that. Now, part of it is Thank you, Matt, for clarifying. And let me respond, because you raised a very important question. How can we transcend that security approach? Why do we use violence? If I want to think out loud, it is because I want vengeance. Why do I want vengeance? Because I'm angry. Why I'm angry? It's because I am afraid. Why am I afraid? Because I don't want to perish. I don't want to vanish. I don't want my connection to the land to be dismantled. So, in my narrow view, I think we should trust each other, learn how to trust each other. It's almost impossible, but from my experience, love is much stronger than fear, anytime, any day. And love means closing your eyes and just jumping that cliff, that edge, or that ledge. You just jump because you know and trust deep down inside your heart that there is someone down there who is going to pick you up. Easier said than done. But yes, what we're doing is doing this. And again, I need to emphasize the importance of agreeing on things. Now we agreed on the connection to the land. I like to think that we are in agreement. But however, you mentioned the point that it's being that connection, that Jewish connection of the, to the land, to the Holy Land, is being dismissed by its surrounding, Arab surrounding. Why do you think that? And this is me thinking out loud again. And I believe the answer lies in the manner and the way that relationship is being manifested and consolidated, because it is based on brute force, unfortunately. And that's what we're trying to change. Yes, acknowledging one another. I recognize you, you recognize me, you're a gentleman, I am likewise. After it, we have to recognize our mistakes. Yes, both. It takes two to tango after anything. It takes two to tango. It takes two to have war, and it takes two to make peace. So yes, our faults, we need to own it, each side. And I believe the first step that will lead to that will be recognizing and acknowledging the victim, not denying his victim or their victimhood or gaslighting it or trying to rationalize it, because we can't believe that some of our people can be bad. This goes both ways. With that, I am complete. Thank you.
Where does that leave your thinking, Matt?
Yeah, thank you. So Walid, thank you for that. And yeah, we all want to believe that our martyrs died for a good reason, that the people who perished for a cause died not in vain, but for a legitimate purpose. So I think that that desire to see the loss of our loved ones as having inherent meaning is something that our people share, and that's probably a universal human trait. And like you said, it takes two to tango, it takes two to make war, it takes two to make peace. So if we can make war, we can make peace. And just acknowledging the sort of mutual experience of victimization, I think that's right. So, and Bill, to your earlier question about how can we expand this conversation, I think we do need to reach out to like-minded individuals and organizations and groups, and affirm our acknowledgement of our shared humanity, our shared aspiration, our shared past, and propagate a vision of a reality that is positive, that's peaceful, and that has an understanding in place that if there are issues, that they get to be addressed really richly and to completion. So someone's got to lead it, Walid. We can lead it, others can lead it. I think that the issue is to make common cause and be bold in our declaration that we believe and see possible that Jews and Muslims, the whole Abrahamic family, Israelis and Palestinians, and anyone impacted by that conflict, if you want to call it a conflict, it's a relationship that we get to stand for a transformation of that and go from there. We're not going to have all the answers figured out before we start.
Yeah, and I mean, you've introduced to this group some of those other groups of like the women that are setting up a group. So I just wonder how, or if you could reach out to them and make proposals.
Definitely. Walid, do you have anything to add? You've muted yourself again.
Yeah, definitely. You spoke about how we give meaning to our murders, to the loss of our loved ones. And I think that we have to try to change that meaning. I'm not saying to dismiss any meaning, of course not. To change what it means. Because right now the meaning is vengeance. To me, I will do my very best to change the meaning of and the pain of the loss of our loved ones towards finding it as a common thing, because it's not just you who lost his, I also lost mine. To try to make or to found a commonality in that, because I dream of the day where we have a mutual shrine for everyone who has been lost since October 7th. I dream about such a day. Reaching out to like-minded people, yes, I agree. But the problem is like-minded people are such a scarce commodity. We're very rare. That's why I think we need to create like-minded people by being genuine, by being impartial, by being objective. Are we leading the way? Are we leaders? I don't know. The way I see it is that I'm only a continuation of the people before me. And I just received the torch, and I will keep doing what I'm doing until I pass the torch to the next person or the next generation to continue and have better impact and better results. I'd love to see a comprehensive political solution in my lifetime. I'd love to. But are we close? Reality says we've never been farther. So still, we have to continue and we have to keep on going. We have to pick each other up, because not just, it's an up mountain climb. It's not just a hill. And we need to keep pushing each other and pulling each other to reach as far as we can to pass the torch and make the life of the next person or next generation who receives that torch easier. Thank you.
I totally agree, Walid, that we do need to be the ones to work and to reach and to extend the torch. And for the Olympics, I worked at the Salt Lake 2002 Olympics. The theme was light the fire within. So light the fire within of the possibility of coexistence and peace and reconciliation, brotherhood and sisterhood. I don't know how that fits in with a bigger political solution. I don't know that we'll know exactly when that's going to happen. But what I do know is that if we each think of ourselves as possessing the olive branches, and every day we take one olive branch and hand it off to someone who we may disagree with on some level or have some sort of a conflict with, or just even a friend that we could be closer with, or a stranger on the street, you know, one metaphorical olive branch, one kind word, one action to listen or to reduce misunderstanding, one action a day. If we all do that every day, or at least more days than not, we'll slowly tip the needle, tip the scale in the direction of an eventual peace. So that's something we can all take on right away. So I'll take that on if you'll join me in that. Will you?
Absolutely. Of course, that's why I'm here. However, again, cannot emphasize the importance of agreeing on calling a spade, because yes, everybody wants to come with the olive branch, but is that really an olive branch? Or is that what you think is an olive branch? So, and I'm not talking here, you, when I said you, I didn't mean you personally. I'm generalizing, of course. So, to do that, to have that agreement, what should be the standard? From my point of view, if we don't have international law, then we're lost. Not just us, all humanity, because everything that happened after World War II and what constituted in terms of international organizations and international law, if we are not able to uphold ourselves to that and use it as a standard in formulating our relationship, I believe it's going to be very difficult to move forward. So again, without international law, personally, I can't think of anything else to be a reference or a standard to lean on or to step on to move forward, to be able to move forward. Thank you.
I hear you, Walid, the importance of international law. And earlier you spoke about the olive branch. And what you said essentially is the extension of the olive branch authentic, or is there some hidden purpose behind it? So I think that's something that we get to mind, is we have to be authentic in our gestures of kindness, and it requires, I think, giving up a certain level of being right sometimes, or it's like arrogance, like I have the sole custody of truth and righteousness and justification in my cause, and every fact, every happening, every event is justified in my favor and against your favor. So we have to be willing to give that up. I think that's a kind of arrogance. And international law, if we have international law applied, it has to be applied in an unbiased way, which isn't always the easiest thing. But I would think about it in terms of mutual rights and responsibilities. We all desire and deserve human rights and equal treatment under the law. And we all have responsibilities as well to ensure that our neighbors also get to enjoy those rights. You can't have all the rights, but none of the responsibilities to other people. That's not going to work. So I think if we can apply a standard, there are good standards of international human rights that can be applied properly. And again, it's so easy to blame one another for all the stuff that happened and all the decisions that were made. But it's quite another to say, okay, the past is the past. And yeah, we have to look at that and accept the consequences of what happened. But also, okay, what can we create now? What can we put into place that's going to call forward the expansion of mutual rights and responsibilities? You know, we can't keep killing each other and just expect that that's going to work.
Where do we go from here then?
I'd like to clarify something about the authenticity, how the olive branch is authentic. Yes, the angle that you mentioned is there, but that's not what I was trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that truly, I'll find Israelis coming to, or pro-Israelis coming to me, thinking and believing that what they have is an olive branch, meaning that peace is tailored according to their best interest. And that's not peace. That's not objectiveness. That's not an olive branch. That's why we need to call a spade a spade. International law being biased, I'm not talking about what happens in the General Assembly or the Security Council and the whole polarization of the different political camps in the international arena. No. I'm talking about the human lesson that we have learned as a humanity following the Second World War that has gave us those laws. I'm talking about the spirit of the law itself. Because, for example, the Fourth Geneva Convention, Article 18, prevents attacking any infrastructure, civil infrastructure. Now, Article 19 says, unless it's used for militarized purposes. However, the argument of proof or existence of a proof and a weekday schedule that was found in the Shifa hospital and presented as the schedule of rotations or names, I will not dwell in that. No. My point is this. The soul of the law itself. If I am a sniper, if I am a pilot, if I am in a tank and I see in my scope that there are civilians, I will not shoot, because to me, I cannot afford to have that as a collateral damage. I believe that what needs to be considered, regardless of the details, because the demons are always there. And if there is a tit, there will always be a tat. So no, focus on the soul of the law. If I want to protect myself from any mistake, and in Arabic we have a saying, امشي عدل يحتار عدوك فيك. Walk straight, your enemy will be confused. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Very good. Well, yeah, I mean, we are human beings, right? So it's one thing to take the most high road approach in a conversation, and then there's the reality on the ground, which is that sometimes in war or in peacetime as well, people take action that they later regret, or that was done based on a kind of ideological blindness. Perfectly justified in their own mind. So, you know, that's going to happen. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on the rules of war, but I know that in war, you have objectives, and you certainly work to minimize civilian casualties. I don't know that we want to get into all of that right now. Except to say that, what I will say is that here you have communities or peoples that have different cultural understandings of legitimate conduct in war, in fighting. And first of all, I think we just need to recognize that. So what's considered fair game in one perspective is beyond the pale to the other perspective. And I think that creates an increase in the hostility and the anger that's experienced. So I'm not even suggesting a fix for that. What I'm saying is let's recognize that that dynamic is there so we can see it and help to understand why there is this vitriol that exists amongst so many people for one another. So just kind of like recognizing the reality of the situation, the cultural, practical, behavioral differences that exist. I think that's something that we should acknowledge. Where do we go once we've acknowledged that? You tell me.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with you. I mean, changing the dynamic. I'd love for young Palestinians to learn about the Holocaust. I'd love for young Israelis to learn about the Nakba. I'd love to see the systematic burial of the Nakba and this cognitive dissonance inside the Israeli society to be filled with information and reality and objective one, of course, to be able to own up basically to our mistakes. I'd love for the Palestinian people to know what they have done historically. Because October 7th is not just the only thing that we have done. No, we have done things like that, similar. We have shed blood. We have been proud of shedding the first blood. So no, we have to revisit that. We have to recognize it. We have to acknowledge it as an error for us to be able to deepen and concrete that trust between us. That's how I see it. So if you disagree with me, please let me know. And if you have other methods and ways, also let me know. Because I'd
Yeah.
like to think that we complete each other.
Absolutely. And I'm all for, this elevated relationship and elevated approach to resolving differences. I think, at the end of the day, dealing with all of the painful realities is the access to a higher relationship that can exist. And talking about truth and honesty, I think one of the things that's so very painful is when things happen and then people deny that they happened. There are things that happened on October 7th that some people say they didn't happen. And that's particularly galling, I think. I don't know if you know this word, galling. It's like gets under your skin. And so the shared experience of victimization, the shared experience of pain, the authentic expression of just life and experience and what happened. I think there needs to be a bigger forum for that, where people can talk about and share the real suffering that they went through. And also, I think when you work through that, when you release that and share that, there's a cathartic release. First of all, it helps to be heard by someone else, but the experience of being able, it's like venting, but it's more than venting because it's gotten, the experience is gotten by the other, which we're careful about how we use that term, but by people that have a different experience. And so I think if we do that en masse, that'll go a long way toward addressing, first of all, it's just bottled up steam, bottled up hatred and anger that needs to be vented and blown off, but not just rhetorically, in a way that really makes a difference. So it takes a certain courage, I think, for people to talk to someone with different views and work through those differences of perspective, especially if you're not trained, it can go off the rails pretty quickly. So, today we have Bill and Peter here to, keep us on track if anything goes off the rails, and to hold the space and to ask really good questions and provide a rich listening. So we have that opportunity here. Not everyone has that, but I do think that if we simply commit to greater patience, to letting things go, and to deep listening, that can have an impact. So yeah, I think we should really look at how to expand the format where these conversations can take place. And also at some point, I think it's important to talk about what are the specific actions, who are the conversations, who are the people that need to be impacted, whether it's people in leadership positions or people with particular influence, even well-known artists with a big following who can spread a message of peace and coexistence and reconciliation to their fans and their followers. So I think we should look at how can we deepen that level of impact.
Well, allow me to go back to idea of dismissing October 7th. I'll call it and I'll raise you by discussing the celebration of it. Listen, October 7th, everything that happened in that cursed day was unprecedented. Everything. But if I have to pick the number one thing that I can that has that power over that can dismiss everything that has been unprecedented on October 7th, is that for the first time ever, Palestinians and Israelis exchanged seats. For the first time ever, it's Palestinians who were in cognitive dissonance, not Israelis. It's Israelis who are in pain. It's Israelis who are voicing their pain, and it's Palestinians who were dismissing them on October 7th for the first time. Because the standard is having the Palestinians being dismissed either by trying to rationalize what happened or whatever method used in the gaslighting, either intentional or unintentional. Because the attempt to rationalize is unintentional gaslight, because I cannot comprehend that something awful were done or committed by the hands of my people. So, celebrating October 7th. Yes, it was celebrated. Not by everybody, by a portion, regardless big or small, but it was celebrated. And let me tell you this. Another people, Palestinians, were so sympathetic with the Israelis with October 7th because of the crimes committed against them. But as soon as the Israeli retaliation started, that sympathy was lost. Celebrating the death of the other, celebrating the harm of the other. Yes, we distribute sweets whenever there is an attack on Israelis. That's true. But guess what? The Israelis are also ill or sick by doing the same thing. For example, in the 2014 war, some Israelis brought their chairs and seats in a VIP scene just to have the best view of the fireworks that are being done in Gaza with bombardment and rockets and bullets fired. So that's a celebration. For example, recently, when Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated, Israelis started distributing sweets. I remember in 2011 or 10, I really can't remember precisely, but there was a car accident in the West Bank. A bus, a kindergarten bus that was filled with children. And it was an accident, and they flipped. It was after the Jabba checkpoint, after Kalandia checkpoint. Sorry, on the way to Jabba checkpoint, right before that checkpoint. They were all children. Most of them passed away. The celebration of death of the other, even if we didn't reflect it or we didn't cause it, just for them having pain. That's a disease that both societies suffer. And it's coming from demonizing the enemy by eliminating the aspect of humanity. So that's what we need to change. Now, again, expanding the space and handing people. Listen, I'll share with you a piece of wisdom that I learned in the most difficult way. If someone came to me and told me that I have a tail, I will ignore him. If a second person came to me telling me, Walid, you have a tail, I'll start to think about it. But if a third person came and told me that I have a tail, I'll walk myself to the stable. In other words, us being objective, us being impartial, us being genuine, us paving the path. Again, we can think that what we're doing is the right thing. I can sincerely believe that what I'm holding is the olive branch, but is it? It's not us who can determine. It's the people joining us who can determine our success from our failure. Thank you.
What does that mean to you, Matt?
Well, regarding the point of the celebration, that's a question that's been reflected on in the Jewish world, and we should certainly be humble in terms of not celebrating the suffering of someone else, but at the same time, when we're oppressed, I think it's kind of a maybe natural reaction. I was reading a story recently about the Holocaust and the Nazis in Auschwitz. They asked the Jews to sing and dance, and they sang V'hi she'amda, which translates to, for not just one alone has risen against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise against us to destroy us. And the Holy One, blessed be he, saves us from their hand. So in Jewish tradition, going back hundreds of years, there's a tradition of overcoming, whether it's the Egyptians, the pharaohs being drowned in the Red Sea as Moses leads the people out of the land. You know, they look back and they see the Egyptians getting drowned, and they're singing and dancing, and then there's an admonition, you know, be careful before you take too much joy in the downfall of your oppressor. So on one level, it's a natural reaction, but it may not be a helpful reaction. Certainly, we have to question the wisdom of things, not just the justification. It may be justified to take a heavy hand with your oppressor, but is it wise? Is it the best and most wise approach in a way that guarantees not just a short-term military victory, but a long-term reconciliation and peace? So I think we have to think about what is the wisdom. I mean, the celebration, it's like, I get it, you know. Are we gonna dwell on that? It would be nice if people felt empathy for each other, but just sort of given human tendencies, we can understand why it happens. So I wouldn't obsess on that or dwell on that too much, regardless of where it's coming from. I think what we can do is look and say, yeah, we can try to vanquish each other and keep on suffering, or we can search for a higher reality and start talking about it. You know, conversations, language takes on a life of its own. There's the study of ontology, which is being, who we are in being, and language, and how language creates our world and our reality. Our words become the fabric of life. And so the words that we say, whether we're extending, when I say the olive branch, by the way, it's not just a political olive branch, but it's the spirit of it, which is, can I do something to make this relationship better, more peaceful, to help someone else heal and overcome some discomfort? It's a mindset that we can bring. So that's what I think there is to do. I guess there's a question is, you know, how deeply do you really need to go into the unworkability? Do we need to go all the way down to, you know, every ounce of discontent? Or does there come a point where we can say, all right, we've really dealt with the issues, now let's declare them complete and move on? So I think, again, it's a balance, but I think in this conflict, speaking generally here about, you know, the conflicted relationship amongst Israelis, Palestinians, Jews, and Muslims, we can take a holistic approach and say, okay, what happened is past, and someone, whether it's the president of the United States or the prime minister or the elected official of this group or that group, or just common citizens who come together and raise their voice and say, enough is enough. Let's work this out. You know, easier said than done, but I think the spirit of the fact that people are in a room together or have signed on to a statement of intention or are just demonstrating common cause in some way, I think that's really critical. That's why the idea of growing a movement and bringing in partners is really critical.
Matt, I just wonder if at this stage, whether there's some value in bringing members of the audience into the conversation. Certainly someone on the chat was saying she'd like to comment.
Sure, be
Absolutely,
my
but
guest.
may I just clarify and try to recreate? Because it's very important, again, to call a spade a spade. Yes, of course. The Jewish historical journey is something to, personally, I admire it. The evolution, the historical one until this day, I admire it. But I fear how the future direction, I fear how it's going to affect what is the Jewish identity. I fear of karma. I fear of the future if we continue our ways. Now, you said a word that I heard that I hear for the first time being used to represent the Israeli or Jewish situation in terms with the relation with Palestinians. You said that, and this is me rephrasing what you said, is that when you are oppressed, it's natural to celebrate the pain of the other. Do you agree with me on this rephrasing of your words, or you don't?
I'm not saying that that's the right approach for me or any particular individual. I'm just saying that I can see that people would respond that way sometimes. So
Okay.
I'm not saying
Thank
like
you.
that's the correct approach.
Thank you. Thank you. But it's just baffling to me is that in terms of the Israeli relation with Palestinians, Israelis would view themselves as oppressed. So now I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued because it's not Palestinians who have the liberty of going to. It's not the Palestinian army who has the liberty to go to Tel Aviv, to Tikva, to Ashkelon, and go there and arrest whoever Israeli citizen there. It's not like the Palestinian army has its own checkpoints between Ramat Gan and Beersheba. So can you please help me understand how the Israelis are being oppressed in terms with their relation with Palestinians?
Okay, I get what you're saying. So, well, first of all, not to say anything about the Palestinian experience of being oppressed, but I think the Jewish experience it's more one of being persecuted, of being attacked and not tolerated. So in the state of Israel, of course, a Jewish citizen has the rights and the freedom of movement that someone in Ramallah or in Hebron maybe doesn't have. But the experience of establishing a homeland in the Middle East and then having Arab armies attack you and then having rockets fired from southern Lebanon or from Gaza continuously over a period of decades, having voices from from many different places condemning you and criticizing you and demonizing you with the anti-Semitic cartoons and the hook noses and the paunchy political leaders, the whole experience of intolerance that I think a lot of people don't appreciate who haven't experienced it. I mean, I've been lucky. I grew up in Connecticut in the United States, a very nice liberal town, not immune from acts of anti-Semitism or intolerance. But certainly when I was growing up, that stuff was very far away. And even today, it's a generally safe place, although there's more of a sense of threat than there used to be. So that's what I'm talking about. It's this kind of age-old persecution and oppression that now has reared its head. The incidence of anti-Semitism in the United States are at a record high. Jews are the most targeted group now in the United States. So this is an experience of kind of having the finger on the trigger against us that has us be on edge and feel not accepted. Now, to take the flip side of the coin is the opportunity to proactively be the leaders of peacemaking and proactively extend the olive branch. Going back to the United States experience, we do have equality here. So I can go down to Washington, D.C. and have lunch with a Palestinian, and we have full equal rights, freedom of movement. There's no question that we're equal citizens, equal treatment under the law. So that's something that is missing in the region, absolutely. So that's what I'm pointing to, is when we talk about, I mean, I'm not defending a Jewish person who's watching the fireworks over Gaza or handing out candy, but the experience of satisfaction that occurs when seeing your persecutor get his comeuppance is something that I think that's more of the experience that I'm pointing to. So Bill, you wanted to go to the audience. It's okay with me if Walid is okay with it.
I have to recreate and respond very quickly. And I will give a solution at the end. I'll start from the end. Listen, the competition of victimhood, that's not going to help anyone to reach anywhere. Okay. And the narrative the Israeli narrative of having the five Arab armies and trying to invade, and having the secretary of the Arab League at the time saying that they will push the Jews to the sea. I get that, but at the same time, when those army engaged in fight with the Jewish Zionist paramilitary groups at the time, they were committed to the borders that were drafted by the partition plan. And that's when the Nakba started, with the rejection of the partition plan, and continued until mid-50s with the systematic displacement of Palestinians, even after the establishment of the State of Israel. Now, the anti-Semitic tropes, yes, they exist, but I couldn't help but feel that somehow you're projecting the anti-Semitic tropes that you suffer and you have to face, unfortunately, in North America, because the memes and that anti-Semitic box, we don't have it here. We don't have that image of the Jew with the nose thing. We don't have it. That's coming from Europe. That's coming from the West, not us. Yeah, do we have anti-Semitism? Yes, but in a different shape. Some of it is direct, and some of it is conscious, and some of it subconscious. Again, the subconscious, I hold the actions of the Israeli state and how the relationship was manifested. Jews being welcomed, they were the early Jewish waves to mandate Palestine, before the mandate to Palestine, was welcomed. And people didn't care, and people didn't think. In fact, the threat, or the people, the perception of Zionism as a threat didn't come from Palestine. It came from outside. It came from the Arab world. I don't know specifically who initiated ringing the bell or the alarm, but for example, in Algeria in 1905, an Algerian author warned about the Zionist project and how it is coming to eliminate the Palestinian one. Now, again, let's go back to welcoming Jews. There was a phase where Jews were welcome. There was a phase where Jews immigrating, coming on board the ships with signs saying, we are coming from a bad place, and we hope that you will welcome us in Palestine. At some point that existed, but then things shifted with politicization, polarization. Even the Zionist founding fathers, at the very beginning, they were confused what to do. Are they going to seek self-determination or sovereignty? And the Peel Commission presented an unimaginable opportunity, according to Ben-Gurion's journal, because for the first time, the option of displacing the Palestinians was offered. Then we had the Baltimore Convention, and of course, the Holocaust and everything happened after it. The rest is history. So, as much as I understand the Israeli narrative, I respect it, but at the same time, it's not completely accurate. As much as I respect and understand the Palestinian narrative, it is not completely accurate. The truth, everybody claims the truth, but the truth is something between the lines, between the two narratives, because again, for us to be able to unpeel all these layers to reach the truth, we have to own up to our actions and be responsible for the mistakes that we have done. Because as long as we're denying and dismissing, that the truth will be lost. So we have to own up. Again, the starting point for for this intervention of mine is that the victimhood card is not going to help anyone. And as a Palestinian myself, I assure you, for me personally, after October 7th, because to me, the Palestinian cause was so righteous, was so white, that nothing can dilute it. But after October 7th, there's this big stain, big black stain on that white dress. And I fear for that stain to expand and the dress, instead of it being white, for it to be black. I try to use whatever detergents to shrink that ink mark, but again, how to do that? And we have to be agreeing on certain things, because the partnership, how can we be partners without complete blind trust and without alignment and agreement on things for us to move forward? That's difficult, and that's a problem of the peace camp and the peace activists. Unfortunately, we don't see things eye to eye. Unfortunately, that is a problem, because as much as we need to work with our peoples, as much as I need to work with Israelis and work with Palestinians, the societies, I also need to work with my people, with the peace camp. We have to evolve, because either we adapt or perish. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have to evolve, I agree. And we have fortunately, we can think of it as an opportunity. We can also think of it as a necessity. If there's a silver lining to the recent escalation of hostilities, I think that's the silver lining, which is that it puts the focus on the necessity of some other way, even though there's greater polarization and anger and death and injury and suffering. In some way that spurs the awareness of the necessity to find another way. So whatever we can do to bring leadership to that conversation in a world in which there's so much focus on the past and the unworkability, then that's, I think, a valuable contribution. Just a couple of comments about the history of Jews and Muslims going back through time. It's complicated. There were times when relationships were good. There were times when they were hostile. And there was a lot of mixing amongst those times. When I was in graduate school, I spent a summer living in Shef Amr or Shefar Am. It's a village in the Galilee, which historically had Jews, Christians, and Muslims living together, coexisting side by side. And the Jews moved out a long time ago, but I had the privilege of spending a summer there with Elias Jabbour, who is a Christian Palestinian peacemaker, citizen of Israel, and had the House of Hope International Peace Center. And spending time in this village, I'd go to the shawarma shop and get a shawarma or a falafel from the Arab guys there, and I felt very safe doing so. And they appreciated, I think, having a Jewish person there. Now, were there maybe people in the village that I'd want to avoid? Perhaps, I had some degree of alertness moving around, but my experience there was a very warm recollection of the times past. The Jewish synagogue is there. It's still there. There's an Arab family that has the key when I was there, at least. And it was a good experience of being in a setting where historically there was good relationships going back through time. And even members of my family came and visited and reminisced about what it was like going back several decades to when their fathers and grandfathers got along and, broke bread together, and grandmothers and mothers. So that history is there. I don't think it was black and white in the sense that Jews often did meet a hostile reaction. The example you gave of the Algerian author who warned about what would happen when the Jews came, I think that sort of narrative or story took on a life of its own and is one that ended up in conflict with a mirror image Jewish narrative of the survival at the beginning of the state. And earlier we talked about existential threats. So I think Jews and Palestinians have the experience that this is an existential matter, and that if one is complacent or inactive, then your whole existence could be threatened, and I don't think anyone wants that to happen. So
Can I
the
just
solution
stop you
is there too.
uh,
Yeah, go
for a
ahead.
moment? I think that you're entering a discussion which maybe could be a whole discussion for another time. Would you agree maybe to halt it there? We're over time anyway, and maybe allow a couple of questions from the audience and then finish today's session. Would that be okay with
Bill,
you?
there was already multiple questions raised by someone on the chat.
Yeah.
So should we respond to that first, or should we allow others to express their questions for us to respond
Well,
at once, or
I
should
think
one question at a
person
time?
that's saying that needs to go soon, so it'd be good if she could voice her concerns. And then,
Hi, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I really need to go. I'm having difficulties with these conversations, I have to say. I'm an Israeli. I lived in Israel since I was born until the age of 30, 31. I live now in London. I chose with my feet to live with safety because it wasn't safe. It's not safe for Jewish people to live in Israel. I lived in Jerusalem as a teenager. When I learned how to drive a car, I needed to take distance from buses because they had very high chances to bomb. When I went for jogging, I needed to carry with me a pocket knife because I used to live near 3 villages that a lot of terrorists came out from there. So I am now experiencing here a duality between the worlds. The Western world, which is very polite, very amicable, very nice words, very beautiful words of how to find peace, versus the reality that Israeli do live in Israel as Jews. And I'm sure Arab Israelis have their own baggage to say. I'm not speaking about the government and the mentality of the government. And I'm sure the Gazan people have a lot of things to say, the Palestinians have a lot of things to say, but to present here in such a way that it's just the, I'm sorry, I can't handle that at the moment. I come from relationship as a relationship expert. And for me, I'm comparing this situation or this conversation to, let's say, an abuser and a victim, just like we have in domestic violence or in domestic abuse. What I see constantly is that the abuser will pretend to be a victim while trying to say, oh, but I want peace. Oh, but I just want like that the house will be fine. I want my wife to be okay. I want the kids to be okay. I care about the kids. But in reality, whenever someone says to him, sorry, it's not necessarily for the men here, but when someone says to that abuser, you need to change your behavior. You can't keep on attacking her. You can't keep on trying to kill her and think that it will be okay, instead of the abuser to change their behavior and realize that they need to repair, they need to correct, they need to get some serious therapy about wounds from the past and traumas from the past, and get over the will to venge and vindict and to revenge whatever, the cousin and the sister and whatever from 70 years ago or more than that. That's when a change can come. We're not looking for peace. No one is in that illusion that there will be peace, because as you said, Walid, yes, the fear does exist there. Existency fear, but it's not because someone is maliciously killing civilians there. There is illogic way of fighting a war without military uniforms inside schools, behind families, and then cry about that in media to show that Israeli IDF is killing civilians. Now, I will have to say that my stress and anxiety from October 7th was so severe that I just stopped looking at the news. I cannot argue around politics. I seriously don't even know who are the ministers there in Israel, I decided 10 years ago to leave this country because of the stress and the pressure there. Seriously. But I had to voice out my voice, which I never do. If you will watch my social media, I never speak anything about politics or anything of that sort. But we cannot keep on talking with Western eyes on things that are completely different culturally that happening in the Middle East. It's not the same culture, guys. It's not the same cultures. It's not the same, how do you say it, vision. It's not the same glasses. There is a lot of aggression there, not just towards Jewish people, towards Muslims within Muslims, Muslims and their wives. It's it's not the same culture. It's not the same codes of behavior. It's just like, I'm sorry, I really hope that I'm making myself clear enough and polite enough in the Western world. I'm sure, Walid, we could have shout at each other and we wouldn't mind about that, because that's the culture of like raising hands and raising voices and be loud, and it's okay. We're very passionate about things that we speak about. But I'm sorry, really, we need to hear the voice of people that want quiet. We're not looking for peace. Let's not get into this illusion. We're not looking for peace. We're looking for order, just like to take an abuser to court and have order. We just need order in place, and we need to understand that there is a massive difference in the way that we look at things. It's quite difficult to come into conversation, and I'm not speaking about one person here, I'm speaking about nations here. One nation that wants to kill another nation, and another nation just don't want to die, doesn't want to die. That's the difference. We now let's have another conversation, and maybe again, like we can start all over again, how we do that, how we really do that. Sorry, I was just being distracted for a second.
May I have your name? I don't want to
Yunit.
butcher your name. So, Lunit. Okay.
Yunit,
I just want to
yes.
assure you that Lunit with an L. Okay.
With
I
a,
just
with a Y. Pretend that it's a Y.
Unit.
Yeah.
I still butchered it. I apologize. Now,
It's all
I
right.
just want to assure you that I heard you. Not necessarily I agree with you on many things. In fact,
I'm
I was
sorry.
triggered by a couple of things. But yeah, I agree with you in the sense that we have our own culture. And yes, there has to be order. Again, before ground zero, there has to be a prelude for the prelude of the prelude. I don't know how many preludes we have. However, I just want to ask you one question. Sorry, before the question. Believe me, and I assure you this, if Israelis were people from Mars, we still have the same problem. And the same way you're saying it's a fight between people who want to kill us and people who want to not die, Palestinians can easily say the same thing. I will ask you to do me a favor. Between you and yourself, when you have those moments of monologues, private ones, whatever statement or thought you make about the Palestinians, okay, I want you to reverse it and exchange Israeli with Palestinian, and just think about it. Okay.
All
Now,
right.
my final thank you. It's just a suggestion.
Sure.
I just have one last question in my response to you. First, allow me to emphasize that yes, indeed, I agree with you. I'm responding to the last statement in the comment in the chat. I completely agree with you. I want your brothers and sisters back, the ones that were taken from their home and party. I agree with you. But in this meeting, I shared with you a piece of information, which is that following October 7th, from the West Bank alone, more than 10,000 prisoners were taken from their homes, Palestinians, let alone the ones that are not registered, and unknown numbers from Gaza, the ones that have disappeared. I shared this information. Now, were you aware that I had brothers and sisters that were in captivity, who have been taken from their homes before October 7th? And if
I'm
not,
not aware of your
if not,
family.
that's if not, that's okay. Now you do. But if you did, then why didn't you call or help me in my call for having my brothers and sisters back to their homes?
Can I answer?
Absolutely.
Well, I would love for you to be with all your family members celebrating around a wonderful table with lots of food on it. Hugs and kisses to everyone. Seriously, that's what I wish for you from the bottom of my heart. That's personally my desire, to see everyone being fed properly around the family table. If I knew that something bad is happening next to me, around me, I would do something to help that person. I do that for my neighbors here. Wherever I live, I take care of my neighbors, the closest ones. Yeah, I can't handle Ukraine or Russia. I can't handle those things, but I am caring for everyone. Every person is a world and their family, okay? With that, numbers that are being provided here, I cannot say they are truthful or not truthful. I need to trust your information, which is, for me, I believe you, okay? But I know for a fact that there are other numbers in place for other things. And I know also that in terms of prisoners, Palestinian prisoners that are taken, usually it's because they are, I don't know how to say it in English actually, being like they're helping or they're assisting Hamas to do what Hamas wants to do. So a lot of the hostages were released from family homes that they were kept there. And a lot of these families, family men, were raping the hostages. So when Israeli army takes people from their home, it's not because they're very innocent. It's because they are, and I don't remember this word, helping Hamas to do what Hamas is intending to do. Again, we have both sides here, and I'm actually glad that I've triggered you, because it means that I said my truth just as much you said your truth, and I was triggered by that. And I felt that when we have this conversation very amicably and very nicely, there are no triggers because we're going with masks. But now we're finally talking about the truth, and we're confronting each other in a nice way. We're confronting here, but in a nice way. So I will ask you now a question. What would you do? You know what? I'll tell you, I will answer your questions. I won't ask you any questions. I will answer your first question to me. I will reverse the thought about Palestinians and Israelis Jew, okay? If I was a Palestinian, I would like to see my country or my city or the territory that I live in, no matter how I call it, prosperous. I would love to see the kids around me celebrating with love, having fun in football games or having fun in basketball or enjoying swimming pools, going to parties, having teenagers and young youth or young adults having jobs, not just in digging tunnels and building buildings, but actually in tourism, hotels, restaurants, teachers, also having education that is not racist or biased. Just a thought, yeah, just for me, how I would like to raise my kids. And as I said, I moved to London because I understand the situation in the Middle East there and in Israel. That would be my way, and I assure you that I don't see the difference in us as human beings. I see the differences between us with the choices that we make in the behavior. These are the differences between us. You and me are equal no matter what. Maybe, I don't know your perspective about me being a Jewish. You might see me as lower than you. I'm a woman. Maybe you see me as lower than you. I don't know. I have red hair, freckles. Maybe I'm lower than you also. I don't know. It doesn't matter. In my eyes, we're equal. But the only thing that makes us different is the choices of our behavior as individuals, as nations. And I really have to go. I'm sorry. I love you
Before
all.
you go, listen, before you go,
To go.
before you go, please, 1 minute. I won't respond to anything. I won't respond to anything. I'm not here to change anyone. I'm here to have people think and reconsider. That's it. For the exercise, nice try, nice attempt, but that's not the exercise I wanted. Let me mirror what you just said. All Israelis are soldiers of the Israeli army. Therefore, no Israeli is an innocent.
But I'm not wearing uniform. I'm not in the army.
No, I'm
I
not.
served in
You
the
have
army
served.
2
I'm
years.
not talking about you
I've served in the
personally.
army 2 years. I finished my job as a
This is
soldier. I was proud of it partially. I almost got prisoned for not submitting
this is
forms.
only
Okay, that's the
mirroring
army
the
behind
support
the
of
scenes.
Hamas. That's all what I wanted to say.
But I finished that at the age of 20 and I moved on with my life. Moved on with my life to have happier life, to have prosperous life,
Yes.
to have
Now,
healthy
for
life,
us Palestinians
build
to have
something for
prosperous
my
lives,
children.
Wait. You need
I need to have the boot of the military
Walid,
occupation off my neck. Thank you.
Walid, say it
Yes, sir.
again slowly. Yonit, I
Which
think you didn't get what Walid said. I'm out. I'm listening.
again, I didn't hear.
No, he
Walid,
asked you
I
to
didn't.
repeat yourself.
I think that Yonit did not hear what you had intended to say.
Yes, I will repeat gladly. The practice of exchanging seats is the one by now I'll exchange the seats. You said the Israeli narrative and how you position Palestinians. Now I will say the Palestinian narrative and how Israelis are positioned. You said that Palestinians support Hamas and that's why they get arrested. Okay, I'll humor that. But this means that, according to Palestinians, it's justified to view all of the Israeli society as a militarized one, and each member of it, each citizen is a military member, either previous or active, because let's not forget, at times of war, the reserves are called, even the retired ones. And this is the reality. So this makes every citizen not innocent. This is just the equivalency that I'm trying to help you establish in your own monologues. View the lens, you see things with the lens of the other. You shared your lens, I shared mine. I accept your lens and not just tolerate it, I accept it. And I see what you see, not because it is a reality in its entirety. There is element of truth there, not the entire truth. Again, your truth, my truth, and the real truth is between our truths. So we have to be flexible enough to tolerate the narrative of the other, to be able to endure how it triggers us, think about it, let it sink in by self-reflection, a genuine one, so I'd be able to accept it. So we'd be able to move on and create a shared narrative from our shared pain and shared blood in this, that the Holy Land got drunk in it. So all I'm asking is a room of flexibility. That is all. Thank you, Lynette.
I respect your answer. I really need to go. I'm sorry, but I love you and thank you so much for sharing your opinions and sharing your way of looking at things. And thank you guys.
And
Sorry.
Yonit, if I may, I thank you for speaking up and for being here today. And you mentioned that you really haven't engaged very much in the whole situation since October 7th. So I acknowledge you for the courage it took to be in this conversation and to speak out and to see things. And as far as Walid's invitation to look at it from another perspective, by all means, follow up with us and, let's continue the conversation.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good evening, guys.
Thank you.
Come back to see us.
You're muted,
Oh, you're
Bill.
muted, Bill.
You muted yourself, Bill.
Is there anyone else that wants to say anything before we finish?
Yes, I'd like to quickly chime in.
Please do.
First of all, thank you guys for making this attempt and presenting your points. Bill, thank you for facilitating. I think that the two of you guys took on an almost impossible task of trying to defend or make okay what the people that you are part of has done or is doing. Next, Walid, I assure you that you are a human being. Next, I think that there was, and I'd like to talk with Walid. I think, Walid, you probably have at least as much information historically and research-wise as I do, but I'd like to talk to you about some of the historical perspective that you have presented, because I think it's inaccurate or incomplete. So I'd like to talk to you about that. I hope I'm doing each of these points very concisely. The next point is a lot of neither Israelis nor Palestinians are a monolithic block of people or a homogenous block of people. And those people who are running the show are not necessarily representative of the people's will, neither in Palestine nor in Israel. And that's super unfortunate. I don't know how we're going to change that, but we do have to think about that. I don't think anybody can really be impartial. Walid, you said many times we have to look at this impartially. I don't believe anybody can be impartial. I think we all have.
That's why I need you. That's why I need you. And as much as you need me.
Correct. Correct. We need not to be impartial. We need to often be, what's the opposite of impartial? We have to be partial. We have to be partial. And not only do we have to be partial, but we have to be aware of it. And the awareness of our biases and our partiality will take care of the problematic part of it. Thanks, guys. I'm finished.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your words. I just, I'm saddened that you feel or think that I'm trying to defend or justify or rationalize. I'm just providing an explanation, because how can I heal something or a disease if I don't know its symptoms to be able to identify the disease itself? I'm sure.
Agreed.
Let me
Agreed.
emphasize.
Agreed. We will all have
That's
to
it.
look at the facts. And once again, we're all aware of the fact that the facts that we choose are only some of the facts. We're all aware of that. And we have to be super aware of the fact that looking at the past facts is not going to solve the future. That has to be a decision that we make to break the bonds of the past.
I think maybe we should finish the conversation there. It's a very good point at which to do that. Matt, would you like to round off and talk about your organization?
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Walid, for joining me today in this conversation, and to Peter for hosting us, and to everyone who is here listening and attending. So I thank you for that. So just to kind of wrap it up, this is a function of the Middle East Peace Civic Forum, and I invite everyone to come check us out on our website, mepcf.org. For those watching later or here today, please consider a financial contribution to the Middle East Peace Civic Forum so we can keep doing these programs and expand them. And I'm just really pleased, Walid, that you've come here today and joined our team, and to you, Bill, for facilitating, steady hand at the wheel to kind of just monitor the conversation and keep it on the rails and keep it intentional and positive. Not all positive, but constructive, I think is the word. So thank you for that. Yeah, and may we wake up in peace very soon.
Next year in Jerusalem.
Next year in Jerusalem. Amen.
Thank you.
Any final remarks you'd like to say, Walid?
Well, I just want to say that I'm happy to be part of this. I'm happy that there is a place or a space for me to voice my opinions. I'm happy that there are people from different places, different backgrounds, seeking peace. This helps to boost the flame or make it bigger, or the flame of hope. So all I can say is that I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm grateful to be able to voice for my people, even though, again, we're not a monolith. Still, it's an option to be considered again. So thank you, and that's it.
Finally, can I just acknowledge Michelle Booth, who's with us from Canada. And she's been very interested, I can see, in what's been said today. So thank you for being here, Michelle.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone. Actually, this is, I realize that's not my ethnic background, but this is a global conversation. We have an obligation from a white perspective, and I think that was so beautifully illustrated, because white people do play a part in oppressing, taking one side over the other for their own means, and that's a fair point. But I think we all have an obligation of respect, of respecting each other's humanity, or respecting our differences, respecting the fact that we should be able to live in places and hold different beliefs without imposing them upon another, and be able to do so in peace. And so I take a keen interest from the standpoint of understanding, whereas a white person, we've contributed to, on both sides, to fueling flames on both sides in the wrong way, and to learn and to be humble and to bring humility. So I thank you all for this conversation. And I just sit here humbly in awe and so grateful that you can discuss your pain, because it's deep on both sides, and to be able to sit and listen without trying to fix anything on my end, other than to be humble. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Michelle.
Michelle. All right. Well, thank you to everyone watching, and Bill and Walid. And it's been a really great conversation, and certainly not the last one. But onward and upward, and next year in Jerusalem.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.